The alien ship appeared above Earth on a Tuesday morning. It was massive, bigger than any city, and it blocked out the sun over the Pacific Ocean. People looked up and pointed. News cameras turned skyward. Within minutes, every screen on Earth showed the same image. A dark metal vessel that looked like it could destroy the planet with ease. Commander John Harris stood in the command center of Earth's Defense Initiative. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, he felt completely unprepared. The screens around him showed data streams, satellite images, and worried faces of world leaders. "They're sending a message," said Lieutenant Karen Moore. She was young, barely 30, and her hands shook as she worked her console. John nodded. "Put it through." The main screen changed. An alien face appeared. It had 4 eyes, dark blue skin, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. The creature spoke, and the computer translated its words into English. "I am Ambassador Krell of the Zetharian Galactic Empire. Your planet is now part of our territory. You have 72 hours to surrender all military forces and accept Imperial rule. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species." The transmission ended. The command center fell silent. John looked around at his team. They all waited for him to say something, to give them hope, to tell them what to do. Before John could speak, the door opened. A woman walked in carrying a briefcase. She wore a gray business suit and glasses. Her name was Lisa Patterson, and she worked for the Department of Administrative Compliance. John had never met her before. "Commander Harris," Lisa said calmly. "I need to speak with you immediately." John frowned. "We're in the middle of a crisis. I don't have time for paperwork." "That's exactly why you need me," Lisa replied. She set her briefcase on the conference table and opened it. Inside were folders, forms, and thick binders of documents. "I have a plan to stop this invasion." "With forms?" John asked. He couldn't hide the doubt in his voice. "With procedure," Lisa corrected. She pulled out a document and handed it to him. "The Zetharian Empire conquered 400 worlds. Do you know how they did it? Not just with weapons. They used legal authority. They made their conquests official through the Galactic Council. That means they care about legitimacy." John looked at the document. It was titled, Interstellar Sovereignty Request, Form ISR-1. He flipped through pages of questions, checkboxes, and signature lines. "I don't understand," he said. A second person entered the room. His name was Peter Chang, and he directed the Bureau of Interstellar Relations, a department that most people didn't know existed. Peter was short, thin, and spoke very fast. "Commander, we've been studying the Galactic Council's laws for 5 years," Peter explained. "Every empire that wants to expand must follow certain rules. They must file proper documentation. They must prove legal authority. If they don't, the Galactic Council can declare their conquests illegal." Lisa nodded. "So we give them what they want. We agree to surrender. But we require them to follow the proper legal process first." John sat down slowly. "You want to fight them with paperwork?" "Exactly," Lisa said with a small smile. "Every galactic empire needs legitimacy. Without it, they're just pirates. The Zetharian Empire won't risk their reputation by ignoring proper procedure. So we bury them in it." John looked at the form again. Then he looked at the alien ship on the screen. He thought about Earth's military forces, which would last maybe 10 minutes against that vessel. He thought about his children, his grandchildren, and every person on the planet who was counting on him to save them. "How many forms are there?" he asked. 47, Lisa replied. "About 12,000 pages total. And if they complete them, then we reject the submission for technical errors and make them start over." John laughed. It was a dry, tired laugh, but it was genuine. "This is insane. Do you have a better plan?" Lisa asked. John didn't. He thought for a long moment, then picked up the phone to call the president. 30 minutes later, he had authorization to proceed. Earth sent its official response to the Zetharian flagship. The message was polite and professional. Humanity accepted the terms of surrender. However, to ensure proper legal transfer of sovereignty, the Zetharian Empire must first complete all required documentation, as specified by Interstellar Law Article 47, Section 8. The forms arrived in the Zetharian communication system moments later, all 12,000 pages. On the flagship, Ambassador Krell stared at his screen in confusion. He had conquered 17 worlds personally. Never had anyone asked him to fill out forms. He called his chief administrator, a nervous creature named Vex. "What is this?" Krell demanded. Vex examined the documents. "It appears to be standard administrative procedure, Ambassador. Legal documentation for territorial acquisition. How long will it take?" Vex calculated quickly. "If we work continuously, perhaps 3 weeks." Krell waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Fine. Complete it. I want this planet compliant within the month." Back on Earth, John stood with Lisa in the command center. They watched the Zetharian ship on the monitors. It hadn't moved. Its weapons stayed offline. "Do you really think this will work?" John asked. Lisa adjusted her glasses. "Commander, I've worked in government administration for 30 years. I've seen Congress debate a single bill for 18 months. I've watched departments argue over budget allocations for years. I've personally delayed construction projects for a decade with environmental impact reports. That doesn't answer my question. I've learned something in all that time," Lisa continued. "Bureaucracy is the most powerful force humans ever created. It can stop anything. It can delay everything. And it never, ever loses." She looked at the alien ship. "They have better weapons than us. Better technology. But they've never faced true bureaucracy before." John nodded slowly. He still wasn't sure this would work, but watching that massive ship sit idle in orbit, waiting for paperwork to be completed, he felt something he hadn't felt since the aliens arrived. He felt hope. Peter returned with coffee for everyone. "I contacted the Galactic Council," he said. "Told them we're processing a sovereignty transfer request. They were very interested to hear that the Zetharians are following proper procedure for once." "Good," Lisa said. She opened her briefcase again and pulled out another stack of forms. "Because, when they submit their first batch, I'm going to need these ready." "What are those?" John asked. "Form rejection notices," Lisa replied with a slight smile. "In triplicate." The command center staff began to relax. Some even smiled. 3 weeks passed. The Zetharian fleet stayed in orbit above Earth, burning fuel and accomplishing nothing. Their soldiers waited in landing bays, their weapons remained cold, and Ambassador Krell sat at his desk, reviewing the final pages of Form ISR 47. "It's done," Krell announced to his staff. "Send it to the humans immediately." Vex, his chief administrator, transmitted all 12,000 pages back to Earth. Then, they waited for confirmation. On Earth, the document arrived at the Bureau of Interstellar Relations at exactly 9:47 inches the morning. Amy Rodriguez, Earth's chief processing officer, printed the entire submission. She was a patient woman with decades of experience in government work. She carried the massive stack of papers to a conference room, where Lisa Patterson and her team waited. "Let's begin the review," Amy said. Settling into her chair, the team worked for 6 hours. They checked every signature line, every date field, every checkbox. They cross-referenced answers with supporting documentation. They verified that all required sections were completed. At hour 7, Lisa found the first error. Pages 2,847 through 3,109 were signed in blue ink. "The instructions clearly state black ink only," Lisa noted. She highlighted each page with a yellow marker. Amy nodded and continued reviewing. By the end of the day, they had documented 47 separate violations of the submission requirements. Any one of them was enough to reject the entire application. Amy composed the official response. She kept it professional and polite. The message explained that the Zetharian Empire's submission could not be processed due to technical violations. A detailed list of errors was attached. The Empire would need to resubmit the complete application with all corrections. The response arrived on Krell's desk the next morning. He read it 3 times, certain he was misunderstanding something. Then he called Vex. They rejected it, Krell said. His voice was very quiet. On what grounds? Ambassador? Blue ink. Krell's claws dug into his desk. We used blue ink instead of black ink. Vex pulled up the original instructions. Article 7, Section 2.3 did indeed specify black ink for all signatures. The error is technically valid, Ambassador. We'll need to resubmit. Krell wanted to order an immediate attack. He wanted to turn Earth into burning rubble. But he couldn't. The Galactic Council was watching. Other conquered species were watching. If the Zetharian Empire destroyed Earth for following legal procedure, their legitimacy across 400 worlds would collapse. Do it again, Krell ordered, and this time, use the correct ink. The resubmission took another 3 weeks. Krell's crew worked carefully, checking every detail. This time, they used black ink throughout. They double-checked every signature, every date, every answer. When they submitted it, Vex felt confident. There are no errors this time, Ambassador. They'll have to accept it. They waited. Earth's review took 8 days. Then Amy's response arrived. The submission was rejected again. Form ISR 29. Section J. Subsection 4.7. B. Had 3 signature fields that were left blank. The instructions required all fields to be completed, even if marked as optional. Krell read the rejection notice 5 times. Then he threw his datapad across the room. Get me a communication channel to Earth, he demanded. I want to speak to whoever is in charge of this process. Commander Kevin Davis was monitoring the Zetharian fleet when the request came through. Kevin was younger than John Harris. But he had learned quickly over the past 6 weeks. He understood the strategy now. And he was starting to enjoy it. They want a video conference, Kevin reported to Lisa. Tell them to submit Form CR-14, Communication Request. Lisa replied without looking up from her current work. That will make them angrier. Good. Angry people make mistakes. Kevin sent the response. As expected, Ambassador Krell submitted the communication request within the hour. He filled it out sloppily, with visible rage in every hastily written answer. Lisa rejected it. The form required a 10-digit reference number, but Krell had only provided 9 digits. The second communication request arrived the next day. This one was correct. Lisa approved it, scheduling the meeting for 2 weeks later. The delay was listed as standard processing time for approved requests. During those 2 weeks, more alien ships arrived. Not Zetharian vessels. These belonged to other species. Some came from worlds the Empire had conquered. Others were neutral observers. They all wanted to see how Earth was stopping a galactic empire without firing a single shot. John Harris met with representatives from 3 different alien species. They all asked the same question. How? Paperwork, John explained simply. We don't fight their strengths. We use ours. A representative from the planet Tarsus IV, a insect-like creature named Click, listened carefully. The Zetharians conquered our world 5 years ago. We tried to rebel with weapons. We failed. But you're saying we could rebel with forms? Lisa joined the conversation. Absolutely. Every conquest requires documentation. If that documentation is incomplete or incorrect, the conquest is legally questionable. The Galactic Council has to investigate such claims. Click's antenna twitched with excitement. You would help us? Share your methods? We'll do better than that, Lisa said. We'll give you templates. While Lisa worked on spreading bureaucratic resistance to other worlds, the scheduled meeting with Ambassador Krell finally arrived. Greg Simpson, Earth's Secretary of Diplomatic Processing, prepared the conference room. It was a small, windowless space in a government building in Geneva. The walls were beige. The table was plastic. The fluorescent lights hummed constantly. There was a coffee machine in the corner, but it had been broken for 6 months, and nobody had bothered to fix it. Krell's image appeared on the video screen at exactly 2 p.m. His 4 eyes were bloodshot. His skin looked darker, almost purple with stress. "Finally," Krell said. "I demand an explanation for these delays." Greg sat calmly across from the screen. Next to him were Lisa and Nicole Warren, Earth's Director of Compliance Review. Nicole was older than Lisa, with white hair and a permanent expression of mild disapproval. "Ambassador Krell," Greg began, "thank you for submitting the proper communication request form. We're happy to address your concerns." "My concerns? My concerns are that you're treating a military conquest like a building permit application." "Well," Nicole said, flipping through a binder, "if you want legal authority over Earth, then yes. It is very much like a building permit application. You're requesting permission to exercise sovereignty over our planet. That requires documentation." Krell's claws clicked against his desk. "I have 600 warships. I don't need permission." "Then you're not an empire," Lisa said flatly. "You're pirates. And the Galactic Council treats pirates very differently than they treat legitimate governments." The threat hung in the air. Krell understood it immediately. Without legal legitimacy, the Zetharian Empire's hold on 400 worlds became questionable. Rebellions would spread. The Galactic Council might intervene. Everything his species had built could collapse. "What do you want?" Krell asked finally. "We want you to follow the proper procedure," Greg replied. "Complete the forms correctly. We'll process them according to standard timeline. If everything is in order, we'll evaluate your request." "Evaluate? This isn't a request. This is a conquest." "Not until the paperwork is approved," Nicole said. She made a note in her binder. "And I should mention, we've filed several counterforms with the Galactic Council." Krell's eyes widened. "What counterforms?" Lisa pulled out a document. "We've submitted an inquiry requesting historical documentation for all Zetharian conquests in the past 50 years. We've asked the Council to verify that proper procedure was followed in each case. We've also filed a formal complaint about your current military presence in Earth's orbit, citing Galactic Law 94B, which prohibits threatening displays of force during active diplomatic negotiations." "This is absurd." "This is law," Greg corrected. "You wanted to conquer Earth legally. We're simply holding you to that standard." The meeting lasted 2 more hours. Krell argued, threatened, and pleaded. The 3 humans remained calm, citing regulations and procedures. Every threat was countered with a legal reference. Every demand was met with a form requirement. When the call ended, Krell sat alone in his office. He calculated the costs. 6 weeks in orbit had burned through millions of credits in fuel. His crew was growing restless, and now Earth had involved the Galactic Council, which meant investigations and reviews that could last years. On Earth, Greg poured himself coffee from a working machine down the hall. Lisa and Nicole reviewed their notes. "He's breaking," Nicole observed. "Did you see his eyes? The stress is destroying him." "Good," Lisa replied. "We need him desperate enough to make a real mistake." 2 months after the Zetharian fleet arrived, Earth's strategy was working better than anyone had hoped. The massive warships still floated in orbit, but they had become an embarrassment instead of a threat. Every day that passed without action made the Empire look weaker. Ambassador Krell submitted the forms for the 3rd time. His staff had checked every line, every signature, every date. They used black ink. They filled in every field. They attached all supporting documentation. The submission was perfect. Amy Rodriguez received the files and began her review. She worked slowly, carefully, looking for any error. After 3 days, she had to admit the truth. The forms were completed correctly. She walked to Lisa Patterson's office with the news. "They did it. Everything is in order." Lisa looked up from her desk. "Everything?" "Every single form. No errors." Lisa thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "Schedule a complete administrative review. 14 business days. As required by procedure." "That's just a delay," Amy said. "After that, we'll have to accept it." "Maybe," Lisa replied. "But a lot can happen in 14 days." She was right. During the review period, 3 major events occurred. First, the planet Tarsus IV officially filed its sovereignty dispute with the Galactic Council. Click, the insect representative, had worked with Earth's team to prepare a detailed legal challenge. The document claimed that the Zetharian conquest of Tarsus IV was illegal because proper forms had never been filed. The Galactic Council took the claim seriously. They sent an official inquiry to the Zetharian Empire, requesting documentation for the Tarsus IV conquest. The Empire had 30 days to respond. Second, 5 more conquered worlds filed similar disputes. Each one used Earth's templates. Each one cited the same legal codes. The Galactic Council was suddenly flooded with paperwork, all questioning Zetharian legitimacy. Third, and most important, the Galactic Council sent an observer to Earth. Her name was Coordinator Shala, and she represented the Council's Department of Territorial Compliance. She was a tall, thin alien with silver skin and large eyes. John Harris met her at a landing site outside Geneva. Peter Chang and Nicole Warren accompanied him. They treated Shala with great respect, following every diplomatic protocol perfectly. "Welcome to Earth, Coordinator," John said. "We're honored by your presence." Shala looked around at the human city. "I've been assigned to observe your sovereignty transfer process. The Council wants to ensure all procedures are followed correctly." "Of course," Nicole said. "We want everything done properly. That's why we're being so careful with the documentation." They gave Shala a tour of Earth's government facilities. They showed her the Forms Processing Center, where Amy's team reviewed submissions. They introduced her to the legal department, where dozens of lawyers worked on interstellar compliance issues. They demonstrated Earth's commitment to proper procedure. Shala was impressed. Most species tried to avoid paperwork. Humans seem to embrace it. "Your administrative systems are very thorough," Shala observed. "We believe in doing things the right way," Lisa said, "even if it takes longer." On the Zetharian flagship, Krell received news of the Council observer with growing dread. This was exactly what he had feared. The Council was now directly involved. Any mistake, any violation, would be reported immediately. Vex tried to be optimistic. "Ambassador, our latest submission is perfect. They'll have to accept it." "And then what?" Krell asked. "The moment we take official control, all those sovereignty disputes become our problem. We'll spend the next decade fighting legal battles instead of governing. What choice do we have? We can't withdraw. The Empire would look weak." Krell had no answer. He was trapped between 2 bad options: continue the conquest and face years of legal problems, or withdraw and admit defeat. Either way, the Empire lost. The 14-day review period ended. Amy's team completed their assessment. The forms were accepted. Earth officially transmitted a message to the Zetharian flagship. "Your sovereignty request has been approved for advancement to Phase 2 of the transfer process." Krell read the message with confusion. "Phase 2? What is Phase 2? Vex searched through the regulations. "It appears there are 7 phases to the complete sovereignty transfer. We've only completed Phase 1. How long does Phase 2 take?" "According to this, Phase 2 requires an environmental impact assessment, a cultural preservation review, and a population census. Estimated time: 6 to 8 months. Krell threw his datapad again. It was becoming a habit. Greg Simpson scheduled another meeting with the ambassador. This time, Coordinator Shala attended as an observer. The meeting room was the same depressing space in Geneva, with the same broken coffee machine. Krell's image appeared on screen. He looked terrible. His skin had turned a sickly gray color. His eyes had dark circles. 2 months of bureaucratic warfare had aged him. "You're adding more requirements," Krell said. It wasn't a question. "We're following the complete legal process," Greg replied calmly. "Phase 1 was just the initial documentation. Now we need to conduct proper assessments before any transfer can be finalized. This is a delay tactic. This is proper procedure," Nicole corrected. "Coordinator Shala, perhaps you can confirm that Phase 2 requirements are standard for sovereignty transfers." Shala checked her datapad. The requirements are consistent with Galactic Council regulations. Any species acquiring a new territory must complete environmental and cultural assessments. Krell looked at the Council observer with desperation. Coordinator, surely you see what they're doing. They're using bureaucracy to prevent a legitimate conquest. I see a species following proper legal procedure, Shala replied. If you find the process burdensome, you can withdraw your sovereignty request at any time. The trap was complete. Krell couldn't attack without becoming a criminal. He couldn't withdraw without admitting defeat. His only option was to continue filling out forms, knowing it might never end. How many phases are there? Krell asked quietly. 7, Greg said. Phase 3 requires economic integration planning. Phase 4 needs population relocation studies. Phase 5 involves... Stop, Krell interrupted. I understand. After the meeting ended, Shala spoke privately with the Earth representatives. I've never seen anything like this. Most species either fight or surrender immediately. You're doing neither. We're doing both, Lisa explained. We're fighting with their own rules. We're surrendering on our terms. Shala made notes in her datapad. The Council will want a full report. This could change how we handle territorial disputes across the galaxy. Back on the flagship, Krell called an emergency meeting with his military commanders. Admiral Zane, the fleet's senior officer, had been patient for 2 months. But his patience was ending. We have 600 warships, Zane said. We could destroy this planet in hours. Why are we filling out forms? Because the Council is watching, Krell explained. If we attack now, we become criminals. Then we withdraw and conquer a different planet, one that doesn't know about forms. Every planet knows now, Vex said. He displayed the latest intelligence reports. 17 species have filed sovereignty disputes. 30 more are preparing their documentation. If we withdraw from Earth, it proves that bureaucracy works. The rebellions will spread. Zane stared at the reports. We're losing an empire because of paperwork? We're losing an empire because we never bothered to keep proper records, Krell corrected bitterly. The humans exposed our weakness. We conquered through force, but we never maintained legitimate authority. Now it's falling apart. On Earth, Kevin Davis monitored the Zetharian fleet's communications. They had become sloppy with encryption, probably due to stress and exhaustion. Kevin could intercept most of their internal discussions. He listened to Krell's meeting with his commanders. Then he reported back to John Harris. They're breaking down, Kevin said. The ambassador knows he's beaten. The military wants to attack, but they can't without council approval. John felt a mix of emotions. Relief that the strategy was working. Satisfaction at outsmarting a superior enemy. But also something else. Something that felt almost like pity. They probably destroyed dozens of civilizations, John said. Killed billions. And we're stopping them with filing requirements. Is that wrong? Kevin asked. No, it's perfect. John looked at the orbital display, showing the Zetharian ships. They built their empire on violence. We're destroying it with patience. Lisa entered with more news. The water world Aquara just filed a sovereignty dispute. That's 18 worlds now. The Galactic Council has announced a full investigation into Zetharian expansion practices. How long will the investigation take? John asked. Years, Lisa said with a satisfied smile. Maybe decades. Nicole brought the latest cost analysis. We estimate the Zetharian fleet is burning through 10 million credits per day just sitting in orbit. After 2 months, that's 600 million credits with nothing to show for it. And Phase 2 will take at least 6 more months, Amy added. By then, they'll have spent billions on an occupation that never happened. Peter coordinated with other resistance worlds. Earth became the center of a galaxy-wide bureaucratic rebellion. The planet that had been targeted for conquest was now teaching others how to fight back. Coordinator Shala completed her preliminary report to the Galactic Council. She wrote that Earth demonstrated unprecedented commitment to proper administrative procedure and recommended that the Council establish Earth's methods as the standard for all future sovereignty transfers. When Krell received a copy of the report, he finally understood. He hadn't just lost Earth. He had lost the entire empire, because once bureaucracy became the weapon of choice, the Zetheria 4 months into the occupation that never happened. The Zetherian Empire faced its worst crisis in 200 years. The fleet above Earth had become a symbol of failure. Every day the warships stayed in orbit, doing nothing. The Empire's reputation suffered more damage. Commander Ryan Mitchell joined Earth's diplomatic defense strategy team in month 3. He was a former military officer who had studied alien warfare for 15 years. But now he wasn't fighting with weapons. He was fighting with words, forms, and legal codes. Ryan's job was to coordinate with the resistance worlds. Earth had become a beacon for conquered species across the galaxy. They all wanted to know the secret. How did humans stop an invasion without firing a shot? The answer was always the same: paperwork. Ryan met with representatives from 12 different worlds. They gathered in a secure conference room in New York. The aliens came in many shapes and sizes. Some had scales. Some had fur. One was essentially a floating gas cloud, but they all shared the same desperate hope. "The Zetherians conquered our world 40 years ago," said a reptilian creature from the planet Draken. "We tried armed rebellion twice. Both times, we were crushed. Can your method really work for us?" Ryan nodded. "It worked for Earth because we understood something important. Empires don't run on military power alone. They run on legitimacy. Take that away, and the whole structure collapses." He displayed a chart showing the Galactic Council's legal requirements for territorial control. There were hundreds of regulations. Most empires ignored them because nobody enforced the rules. Until now, the Galactic Council has to investigate legal challenges, Ryan explained. They have no choice. It's in their own charter. So when you file a proper sovereignty dispute, they must review it. That review ties up resources, creates delays, and forces the Empire to defend its actions. A bird-like alien from Avion Prime raised a wing. "But the Zetherians have lawyers too. They can defend their conquests." "Can they?" Ryan asked. He pulled up another document. "We've been analyzing their conquest records. Out of 400 worlds, they only filed proper documentation for 73. The rest were taken by force with no legal paperwork." The room fell silent. Then someone started laughing. It was Click, from Tarsus 4, the insect creature who had filed the first sovereignty dispute. "They conquered an empire illegally," Click said, still laughing. "Every world they took was a violation." "Exactly," Ryan confirmed. "And now that we've shown the Council will investigate these violations, every conquered world can challenge their occupation. The Empire can't defend 400 legal cases simultaneously." Lisa Patterson entered the meeting with Susan Cole, Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. Susan was a diplomat, with 30 years of experience. She had spent the last 2 months at Council headquarters, filing documents and building alliances. "I have news from the Council," Susan announced. "They've approved the investigation into Zetherian expansion practices. The formal inquiry begins next week." The alien representatives erupted in excited chatter. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Susan raised her hand for quiet. "The Council has requested historical documentation for every Zetherian conquest in the past 200 years. The Empire has 90 days to provide complete records." "Can they do it?" someone asked. "No," Lisa said simply. "We've estimated it would require 4,000 administrators working full-time for 60 years to compile all the necessary documentation. And that's assuming the records even exist, which we doubt." Ryan distributed packets of information to each representative. "These are templates for filing sovereignty disputes. We've customized them for each of your worlds. The forms are already filled out. You just need to submit them to the Council." A crystalline being from Prism touched the documents carefully. "You're giving us weapons." "We're giving you justice," Ryan corrected. "The Zetherians took your worlds illegally. We're just helping you prove it." Over the next week, 22 more worlds filed sovereignty disputes with the Galactic Council. Each one cited improper documentation. Each one requested a full review of the conquest. Each one demanded either proper legal authority or complete withdrawal of Zetharian forces. The Council's administrative departments were overwhelmed. They had never processed this many disputes at once. They hired additional staff. They created new review committees. And they sent official notices to the Zetharian Empire for each and every case. On the flagship above Earth, Ambassador Krell received the flood of legal challenges with numb acceptance. He had stopped throwing his datapad. He had stopped getting angry. He just sat at his desk, reading notice after notice, watching his empire crumble. 95 sovereignty disputes, Vex reported. The Council estimates the investigations will take 12 to 15 years. And the documentation request? Krell asked. Impossible to fulfill. We don't have records for most of the conquests. We took worlds by force and moved on. Nobody kept paperwork. Krell laughed. It was a hollow, broken sound. We built an empire on power. The humans are destroying it with filing cabinets. Admiral Zane burst into the office. Ambassador, the Treasury on Zethar Prime has sent an emergency message. The cost of maintaining our occupation forces across all disputed territories is bankrupting the Empire. They're demanding we withdraw from at least half our positions. Which half? Krell asked bitterly. They recommend starting with Earth. Krell looked at the planet on his view screen. Blue and green and beautiful. Filled with creatures who had defeated him without violence. He had spent 4 months trying to conquer them. Instead, they had conquered him. Send a message to Zethar Prime, Krell said quietly. Tell them I'm beginning withdrawal procedures. On Earth, the announcement was received with careful celebration. John Harris stood in the command center, watching the Zetharian fleet prepare to leave orbit. His staff cheered and hugged each other, but John remained calm. It's not over yet, he said. They're withdrawing from Earth, but they still occupy hundreds of other worlds. Lisa joined him at the window, watching the alien ships in the sky. Those worlds have the tools now. They know how to fight back. Will it be enough? It already is, Lisa replied. She showed him the latest intelligence. 17 Zetharian-occupied worlds have declared administrative independence. They're not rebelling with weapons. They're simply refusing to process any imperial orders until proper sovereignty documentation is provided. John smiled. Bureaucratic revolution. The most effective kind, Lisa agreed. Kevin brought more news. The Galactic Council has asked Earth to send advisors to help other worlds set up proper administrative resistance systems. They're calling it the Earth Protocol. They want us to teach the galaxy how to use paperwork as a weapon, John said. Apparently, we're very good at it. The Zetharian fleet departed 3 days later. Ambassador Krell sent a final message to Earth before leaving. It was brief and bitter. You have not won. You have simply made victory too expensive to pursue. Greg Simpson read the message to his team. Then he smiled. That's exactly what bureaucracy is. Making things too expensive, too complicated, and too frustrating to pursue. We just weaponized it. Susan Cole returned from the Galactic Council with an official invitation. The Council wanted to offer Earth a seat at their table. Earth would become the first species in history to join the Council without having an interstellar empire. They're impressed by our administrative systems, Susan explained. They think we can help reform how the Council handles territorial disputes. How long will it take to join? John asked. Susan pulled out a thick binder. First, we need to complete the application for Council membership. It's only 300 pages. The room burst into laughter. After fighting with 12,000 pages of sovereignty forms, 300 seemed like nothing. Ryan prepared to travel to 12 different worlds to help them set up resistance administrations. Each world needed training in proper documentation, legal procedure, and bureaucratic delay tactics. Earth was becoming the galaxy's teacher in administrative warfare. Nicole compiled statistics on the Zetharian Empire's collapse. In just 4 months, they had lost control of 43 worlds, not through military defeat, but through legal challenges they couldn't defend. The Empire's economy was in freefall, their military was stretched too thin, and their reputation was destroyed. How long until the Empire completely falls? Nicole asked. Lisa consulted her projections. If current trends continue, 18 months, maybe 2 years. All because of paperwork? All because they never bothered to do the paperwork properly in the first place, Lisa corrected. They thought power was enough. They learned it wasn't. The Galactic Council's investigation into Zetharian expansion continued. The Empire tried to provide documentation, but most of their records were incomplete or missing entirely. For 2 centuries, they had conquered through force and never worried about legal authority. Now that oversight was destroying them. Click visited Earth to thank the humans personally. The insect stood in Lisa's office, antenna twitching with emotion. Tarsus 4 is free, Click said. The Zetharians withdrew last week. We didn't fire a single weapon. We just filed forms. How does it feel? Lisa asked. Strange, Click admitted. We prepared for war. We built weapons. We trained soldiers. And in the end, we won with paperwork. That's because paperwork is more powerful than weapons, Lisa said. Weapons can destroy. But paperwork can prevent, delay, redirect, and ultimately defeat without destruction. It's the perfect weapon. Click returned home with copies of all Earth's administrative templates. Within a month, Tarsus 4 had established its own Bureau of Bureaucratic Defense. Other worlds did the same. The galaxy was learning a new kind of warfare. Not battles in space, not invasions and occupations, but forms, procedures, legal codes, and administrative requirements, the weapons that humans had mastered over centuries of government work. John Harris gave an interview to the Galactic News Network. The reporter asked him to explain Earth's strategy. We didn't invent anything new, John said. We just used the tools we already had. Every government creates bureaucracy. We simply understood that bureaucracy could be defensive as well as administrative. Some call it cowardly, the reporter said. Hiding behind paperwork instead of fighting. John shook his head. There's nothing cowardly about using your strengths. The Zetharians were stronger militarily. We were stronger administratively. We fought with our advantages. And now you're teaching other worlds to do the same? We're teaching them that there's more than one way to fight. Sometimes, 6 months after the Zetharian fleet first arrived at Earth, the galaxy looked completely different. The empire that had ruled 400 worlds was now holding on to barely 200, and those remaining territories were filing sovereignty disputes at a rate of 3 per day. Ambassador Krell no longer commanded the flagship. He had been recalled to Zethar Prime to face an imperial inquiry. His replacement, a younger official named Commander Drax, tried to stop the bleeding, but it was too late. The Empire was dying, killed by the very laws it had ignored for centuries. On Earth, life had changed in unexpected ways. The planet that had been scheduled for conquest was now the most important world in the galaxy. Every species wanted to learn from humanity. They sent diplomats, students, and administrators to study Earth's methods. Dan Brooks became Earth's Director of Galactic Affairs. He was a bureaucrat who had spent 40 years working in various government departments. He knew every trick, every loophole, and every way to make paperwork work for you instead of against you. Dan's office was in a new building in Brussels. The Interstellar Relations Complex housed 3,000 employees. They answered questions from alien worlds. They provided templates for legal challenges. They taught courses on administrative resistance. Earth had become the galaxy's university of bureaucratic warfare. We have requests from 47 different species, Dan's assistant reported. They all want help establishing proper documentation systems. Dan looked at the list. Worlds he had never heard of. Species he couldn't pronounce. All of them desperate to learn the art of paperwork. Schedule them in groups, Dan said. We'll run training seminars. Basic administrative procedures. Legal documentation. And defensive bureaucracy. The first seminar had 200 attendees from 30 different worlds. They gathered in a large conference hall. Some sat in chairs. Some floated. Some needed tanks of water or special atmosphere containers, but they all took notes carefully as Dan explained the fundamentals. Bureaucracy works because it exploits a simple truth, Dan told them. Every organization needs rules to function. But rules can be used in two ways. You can follow them to accomplish things, or you can enforce them to prevent things. The key is knowing which approach serves your goals. A young alien from the planet Meridian raised a tentacle. But isn't that dishonest? Using rules to delay instead of to help? Is it dishonest when someone uses your own laws against you? Dan asked. The Zetharian Empire created the Galactic Council's legal framework. They just never expected anyone to actually enforce it. We didn't break any rules. We simply insisted that everyone follow them. Lisa Patterson ran advanced courses for experienced administrators. Her students were bureaucrats from worlds that had been fighting the Empire for years. They had tried weapons and failed. Now they wanted to try something new. The most important principle is persistence, Lisa taught. Bureaucracy is a marathon, not a sprint. You don't win with one form or one rejection. You win by never stopping. Every form you require is a delay. Every rejection is a setback for your opponent. Eventually, the cost of continuing exceeds the value of winning. A spider-like creature from Arachnus asked, "What if they attack instead of filling out forms? Then they lose legitimacy," Lisa replied. And legitimacy is everything in galactic politics. The Galactic Council won't support illegal conquests. Trade partners won't deal with criminals. Even their own people start questioning their authority. Military force without legal authority is just terrorism. The lessons spread across the galaxy. World after world established bureaus of administrative defense. They hired clerks, lawyers, and filing specialists. They created forms, procedures, and review processes. The weapons of paperwork multiplied. Susan Cole completed Earth's application for Galactic Council membership. The 300 pages had been filled out perfectly. Every question answered. Every signature in black ink. Every field completed. The council reviewed the application in record time. Only 3 months. They were impressed by Earth's attention to detail and proper procedure. The vote was unanimous. Earth became the newest member of the Galactic Council. John Harris attended the ceremony on Council Station, a massive structure orbiting a neutral star. He wore a formal uniform and represented all of humanity. When the council president called Earth's name, John stood and accepted membership on behalf of his species. "Earth brings new perspective to this council," the president said. She was an ancient being whose species had been part of the council for 1,000 years. "You have shown us that there are weapons more powerful than fleets. Methods more effective than force. Welcome." John gave a short speech. He thanked the council for their recognition. He promised that Earth would work to make the galaxy more just and peaceful. And he made one specific pledge. "Earth will help any world that seeks freedom through legal means," John said. "We will provide templates, training, and support. Because we believe that every species has the right to self-determination, and we believe that right should be defended with law, not violence." The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. On conquered worlds, beings watched with new hope. On Zethar Prime, the Imperial government watched with growing despair. The Zetharian Empire called an emergency session of their High Council. Emperor Vax, who had ruled for 30 years, faced his advisors with a terrible question. Should they dissolve the Empire voluntarily, or fight until the end? "We can still win militarily," Admiral Zane argued. "We have the largest fleet in the galaxy, and no legal right to use it," countered Minister Laura, the Empire's chief legal advisor. "The Galactic Council has declared 90% of our conquests illegal. If we use force to maintain them, we become criminals. Trade will stop. Allies will abandon us. We'll be isolated and eventually defeated." Emperor Vax made the hardest decision of his reign. The Zetharian Empire would begin a controlled withdrawal from all disputed territories. They would cooperate with the Galactic Council's investigation, and they would try to negotiate settlements with the worlds they had conquered. It was surrender disguised as responsible governance. But it was still surrender. On Earth, Kevin Davis monitored the Empire's collapse with satisfaction. His team tracked every world that gained freedom, every legal challenge that succeeded, every time a bureaucratic resistance movement won without firing a shot. 73 worlds have achieved independence in the last month, Kevin reported. All of them used our methods: forms, legal challenges, and administrative delays. How many worlds are still occupied? John asked. 112. But 98 of those have active sovereignty disputes pending. John did the math. So within a year, the Zetharian Empire will control maybe 14 worlds, down from 400. And those 14 will probably file disputes eventually too, Kevin said with a smile. The transformation was remarkable. 6 months earlier, the Zetharian Empire had been the dominant power in the galaxy. Now they were shrinking daily, defeated not by superior enemies but by their own failure to maintain proper documentation. Ryan Mitchell traveled to the planet Verdant, a world covered in dense forests. The Zetharians had occupied it for 15 years. The local population, a species of plant-based beings called the Verdani, had tried armed resistance and failed. But after learning Earth's methods, they had filed a sovereignty dispute. The Galactic Council ruled in their favor. The Zetharians had no legal documentation for the conquest. They were ordered to withdraw within 90 days. Ryan attended the independence celebration. Thousands of Verdani gathered in their capital city. They waved banners and sang songs, but the most prominent symbol of their freedom was a giant replica of Form SD-1, the sovereignty dispute form. "You saved us without weapons," a Verdani elder told Ryan. "You taught us that law is stronger than force." "We taught you how to use law," Ryan corrected gently. "But you did the work. You filed the forms. You made the arguments. You won your own freedom." The galaxy was learning this lesson everywhere. Freedom didn't require violence. It required patience, organization, and proper documentation. Nicole Warren compiled a comprehensive study of the bureaucratic revolution. Her report showed that administrative resistance had succeeded where military rebellion had failed 93% of the time. The key was persistence and proper procedure. Military resistance gives empires an excuse to use force, Nicole explained in her conclusion. But bureaucratic resistance gives them no target to shoot at. How do you fight forms with weapons? You can't, so eventually, you have to either follow the rules or abandon any claim to legitimate authority. The Galactic Council published Nicole's report as an official document. It became required reading at every diplomatic academy in the galaxy. The Earth Protocol, as it was called, changed how conflicts were resolved across thousands of worlds. A year after the Zetharian fleet first arrived at Earth, Ambassador Krell requested permission to visit the planet. It was an unusual request. The man who had tried to conquer Earth wanted to return. Greg Simpson approved the visit. Krell arrived quietly, without fanfare. He met with Lisa, Greg, and Amy in the same depressing conference room in Geneva. The broken coffee machine was still broken. Krell looked older. His skin was pale gray. His eyes were tired. He sat down heavily and spoke quietly. "I came to understand," Krell said. "How did you know? How did you know that paperwork would defeat us?" Lisa answered honestly. "Because we live with it every day. We know how powerful it is, how it can stop projects, delay decisions, and frustrate even the strongest people. We just realized it could work on empires too. We conquered 400 worlds," Krell said. "We thought we were unstoppable." "You were unstoppable militarily," Greg said. "But you forgot that power requires legitimacy. Without proper legal authority, you were just occupiers. And occupation is expensive, especially when people start demanding documentation." Krell nodded slowly. "My empire is gone. In 1 year, you destroyed what took us 200 years to build, with forms." "We didn't destroy it," Amy corrected. "You did. By not keeping proper records. By ignoring legal requirements. By thinking, Force was enough. What happens now? Krell asked. You go home, Lisa said. You rebuild. Maybe you create something better this time. Something based on cooperation instead of conquest. Something with proper documentation. Krell left Earth that day. He returned to Zethar Prime, where the Empire was reorganizing. They were learning to function as a normal civilization instead of a conquering force. It was a painful transition, but a necessary one. On Earth, Dan Brooks stood in his office and looked at a wall covered with certificates. Recognition from freed worlds, thanks from grateful species, awards from the Galactic Council. Earth had become the most respected planet in the galaxy, but Dan's favorite item was simpler. It was a framed copy of Form ISR-1, the first form they had sent to the Zetharians. The form that started everything. Below the form was a small plaque with Earth's new unofficial motto: "We don't need weapons when we have forms in triplicate." John Harris gave his final interview about the conflict. The reporter asked him what humanity had learned. "We learned that there's always another way to fight," John said. "Violence is easy. Anyone can pick up a weapon. But it takes real intelligence to find peaceful solutions. It takes courage to fight with words instead of bombs, and it takes patience to win with paperwork." "Do you think this changes warfare forever?" the reporter asked. "I think it shows that warfare isn't always about war," John replied. "Sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy is to make their victory impossible to achieve. Not through force, but through frustration. Not by being stronger, but by being more persistent." Across the galaxy, humanity's lesson spread. New conflicts were resolved through forms instead of fleets. Legal challenges replaced military campaigns. And the galaxy became just a little bit more peaceful. Earth had declared its independence from the Zetharian Empire. But more importantly, Earth had declared that there was a better way. A way that saved lives, preserved civilizations, and proved that the pen really was mightier than the sword. Or in humanity's case, that properly filed paperwork was mightier than the largest battle fleet ever assembled. The age of conquest was ending. The age of administration was beginning. And Earth was leading the way. One form at a time. Pen really is mightier than the sword. Or in our case, the form is mightier than the warship. The interview spread across the galaxy. Millions of beings watched the human explain how his species had defeated an empire without violence. The message resonated everywhere. By the end of month 4, the Zetharian Empire was in full collapse. Worlds were declaring independence daily. The Galactic Council's investigation had revealed 200 years of illegal expansion, and Earth had become the most influential new voice in galactic politics. All because someone had the patience to read the fine print and the courage to enforce it. And military advantage meant nothing. Late that night, Earth time, Krell sat alone in his quarters. He looked at the forms for Phase 2. Environmental Impact Assessment. Cultural Preservation Review. Population Census. Each one would take months. Each one would cost millions. And even if he completed all 7 phases, it wouldn't matter. The empire was collapsing. The legal challenges would never stop. The council investigation would destroy whatever legitimacy remained. He had 2 choices: continue fighting a war he couldn't win, or surrender with whatever dignity he had left. For the first time in his career, Ambassador Krell considered the impossible. He considered giving up. Not because he was defeated in battle, but because the humans had made victory impossible to achieve. Outside his window, Earth continued to turn, patient, persistent, and filled with forms that would never stop coming. Kevin entered the room with news. The ships from Tarsus Forv just broadcast a message. They're filing their own sovereignty dispute with the Galactic Council, using our forms as templates. John Harris joined them, listening to the report with growing satisfaction. How many other worlds are watching this? At last count, 37, Kevin said, and 12 of them have contacted us, asking for help with their own paperwork. Lisa smiled. It was a small smile, but it was genuine. The Empire is about to learn an important lesson. You can conquer a world with weapons, But you can't hold it if you can't handle the paperwork. Above Earth, the Zetharian fleet continued its pointless orbit. Ambassador Krell began filling out the forms for a third time. And across the galaxy, the bureaucratic rebellion had begun. Hey, we're still facing an alien invasion. Earth was still occupied by a superior military force. But for the first time, they had a strategy that didn't involve watching their planet burn. John picked up one of the forms and started reading. Question 47 asked for a detailed explanation of the historical precedent for territorial acquisition in this sector of space. Question 48 required 3 independent references from neutral parties. Question 49 needed to be notarized by a licensed Galactic Council official. They'll never complete all this, John said quietly. That's the point, Lisa replied. They don't need to defeat us in battle. They just need to decide that conquering Earth is more trouble than it's worth. Outside, the Zetharian flagship remained in orbit. Inside, Ambassador Krell began filling out forms. He had no idea that he had already lost the war.